Okay, we're here today with Harold Sechler over on Brantley Road. And Harold, we just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to get to know you and to put your story down on video. And having said all of that, or just that, let's get rolling here. How about telling us a little about yourself, when you were born, and
Okay.
lead us through childhood and that sort of thing.
I was born February 5, 1923 in Landis. And this was a home birth, which was the usual in that day. They tell me that I almost didn't make it, that I had pneumonia twice in my first 6 months. However, I am now 97 and a half years old, so apparently I recovered. I lived in Landis up until the time that I went into the Army in 1943, January 20th, 1943. Served in various places within the United States. I never got overseas until February 6th, 1946. So I was a little over, I may have said 50, but it was 40, when I, 43 when I entered the Army. But I served a little over 3 years at the time I was discharged.
What rank?
My rank was Tech Sergeant at the time of discharge. I had served as Personnel Sergeant Major of an overseas replacement depot of 5,000 men. We trained and replaced and organized new outfits for overseas duty. I went there immediately after having been sent from my tech training school. And the first day that we were assembled in front of headquarters squadron, the sergeant came out and said, "Is there anybody here who can type?" Well, I could type. I had at the Orion, I had a business administration course, and at tech school I had gone through it was in fact a business college, so I went through business college again.
Where was that?
And I found out that that was my first mistake. I learned at that time that you don't volunteer in the Army. But I could type, and I could type fairly well, but I didn't like it. I didn't like typing. I wanted, in other words, administration was what my interest was. I served as a typist there for several months, and finally applied for a job that was a non-typist, and that started my moving toward administration. I met a lot of interesting people in the Army, the pass-through outfit, some of which you probably don't even know. One was Max Baer. Max at that time was heavyweight boxing champion of the world. And another was Fritzy Zivik. Fritzy was out of Chicago, and he had held the world heavyweight and world middleweight, lightweight championships. In other words, he would move back and forth one from the other, so he was there. A number of the football personalities came through. In fact, Fritzy was assigned to the gymnasium, and he did personal training work there, and he started boxing within the outfit. He organized boxing club, and actually I sparred a couple of rounds with Fritzy Zivik, but you can be sure Fritzy was taking it easy.
You left out high school.
I moved on then to assistant sergeant, personnel sergeant major, and served there as with the rank of corporal. I came home one time for on furlough, and 3 days before my furlough was over, my wife and I decided to get married. We got married, and
What was your wife's name?
Margaret Sloop.
Okay.
Margaret Sloop. In fact, there's an embroidered plaque on the wall here that shows our date and marriage date and so forth. That was March 5th, 1944. Margaret went back with me to Texas. At that time, I was located at Kelly Field, San Antonio, Texas. Texas. Well, we had no places to go, no job other than my job, and corporal, I was making $66 a month. When I got back, I found that some ratings had been given out in my absence, and I got passed over, which irritated me considerably, and I let that be known, quite frankly. I had friends who worked for me who had a rank greater than mine, and within a month I got my rank. So, and I think this was probably punishment for my marriage without the consent of the commanding officer, because I didn't ask.
Yeah.
But we served together there in San Antonio for almost 2 years, uh, I was frozen into the headquarters squadron. Our commanding officer there froze the cadre. We didn't want to have to train cadre to do the training for everything else for the other men. So he froze us in rank. I had planned to go overseas, and that's what I wanted to do. On VE Day, he released us from the freeze,
We're good. Keep going.
and I immediately put myself into an air fighter squadron that was in training for the South Seas. However, during that period of time before my outfit moved, VJ Day came. I did not want to serve as occupation army in Japan, so because I was getting points that would be close to giving me a discharge capability. So a friend of mine in SAC headquarters said we're starting a separation center in Sacramento, California, and if you want to, you can head it up. I had some friends in California. He said, "Have you got anybody you want to take with you?" So I picked up my friends and we went to Sacramento. There, my wife worked for the state. We were making a lot of money at that time. I had a tech sergeant rank, which was not great, but okay for that time. And she was making 2 or 3 times the amount of money that she made in Sacramento. So, I mean, in San Antonio. So
Right.
we were fine. But I was discharged there then in, as I had said, in 1946, and that ended my Army career. Back to Kannapolis. My father was a farm boy. His dad had a farm roughly 4 miles to the east of Kannapolis, and when it was being built, the Cannon group, they bought logs, and they prepared all the lumber on site for the building of the plant and for all the housing. And he said that he can recall having driven mule team wagon loads of timber to the Kannapolis site. It has progressed. It progressed very fast. Kannapolis became a metropolis in all our estimations. In fact, it was a metropolis as compared to Salisbury and Concord. We had.
When did you come to Kannapolis?
I actually moved to Kannapolis when I came out of the Army in 1946.
Okay.
I did not move into a company-owned home. Actually, I moved into a house that my dad owned, a rental house in North Kannapolis. But well, back in the days much earlier than that, back when I was a child, I remember Kannapolis as the place to go on Saturday. You had movie theaters. You had ice cream and you had stores. You had a Montgomery Ward. You had Crest, Woolworth. You had all the giants at that time were located also in Kannapolis.
Right.
All of Main Street, all those stores were filled with shops and one thing and another. You had a chain grocery store. I'm not sure what it was now, but it was one of the. Well, actually, chains were not really as such, but it was a big store. Actually, Kettner's started. Kettner's became Food Lion,
Right.
and started in Kannapolis. I was in college with the two Kettner boys that began the store.
How about that? Okay. And that was around there at
That was 1941.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that wasn't around there where the Oak Avenue store is today.
No.
No.
Well, Oak Avenue was developed. Yes, their store was on Oak Avenue, and it grew. It became a big store, and finally was through some mergers and growth, it became a major chain, Food Line. And that is still one of the very active chains right now in this area. I delayed in buying Food Line stock there. I think I bought it at 36, which turned out to be the high. And I kept it for a number of years, and Food Line got caught with some infractions in their food, and their stock plummeted. I waited and waited and waited, and it didn't come back. I decided, well, I can use the money somewhere else, so I sold it for $6. One of my first major stock market losses. But prior to that, Kannapolis had been, as I say, a thriving metropolis from the very early days. well, my education, I graduated from Landis High School as president of my class and valedictorian. And was recruited by Lenore Ryan for college, and I elected to do a one-year business administration course, which I did, and then was interviewed by Henry Light. This was it was actually the billing and the shipping office of Canon, and it was known as Light's office. And I remained in that. It actually went much further, and it changed names and all that sort of stuff, and obviously locations. But I remained there for my entire business life, which was 44 years.
Wow.
And I retired in May 31st, 1985.
Wow.
So I've been retired longer than most people live.
So what's your favorite memory? What was the high point of your work career, would you say?
I will say that I enjoyed my work. Except for the last 2 years. I worked long hours. I was assistant manager of the department, and Leon Lackey was the manager.
Now, is this in the mill?
Yeah.
Pardon? Yeah,
This is in the mill.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is in the mill. Yeah.
Okay.
Leon was manager of the order and data processing department. We had 175 people in our office. We had the entire 5th floor of the bleacher building. I have many pleasant memories and some not so of that time. At that time, we had 18. The company had 18 branch offices, and also tie-ins with organizations in Europe. I can remember filling an order for the Shah of Iran
Wow.
at one time. The company, of course, was basically a manufacturer of towels and sheets, but they also got into the sale of some auxiliary items, blankets, rugs, different things at different times. And every time something new was added, it came to my office. They said, "Here's what we want done. Here's the final output that we're looking for." In other words, they were looking for the collection of the money. That was primarily it. But they said, "You work out the rest." So I was dealing with blanket mills in Monroe and in South Carolina, and eventually up in Swannanoa, North Carolina. In fact, we later bought the mill in Swannanoa. The others, I think, are still somewhat in operation. They are Moneta mills. We also had warehouses set up in some of the big cities, so that we owned one warehouse in Los Angeles. In fact, I set it up there and visited there. We also had branches or warehouses in San Francisco, New Jersey, Dallas. All of those my office kept their inventory. They created the shipping documents. There was a salesperson would send their order and send it to the mill. It would send it to the branch office or to that warehouse, and that warehouse would create a shipping document and a memorandum invoice that that indicated what they had shipped. We took that information and applied pricing to it and various details as to coding and so forth, and created an invoice charging the customer and giving our company and salespeople all the documentation that they needed. But that created an inventory that we kept for them, and we replenished their stock based on what our records show their inventory was short. That was all a part of my office. We also was the message center for the company. My operators handled Western Union directly. A telex that was connected to customers as well as to our own branch offices, and another telex line that was private within the company. And we used we received the mail, got the orders, assigned all the coding. We had to determine, okay, this is a legitimate customer, and how is he money-wise? Does he have a credit limit or not? He does. We indicated what that was, and we were careful not to overship that credit limit. and much more. We would, well, in the very,
All right, keep going.
our first computer system would fill um, um, a room probably 40 by 40 feet square. It was tremendous. It was all lamps and tubes and that sort of thing, and a very complicated system, a portion of which enabled us. You're going to have to cut it on over here.
Right.
Okay.
A portion of which enabled us to have our computer talk with the computers of our customers. For example, Walmart would simply hook their computer to ours and would disclose, would place their orders for a group of stores. I don't recall the date, but it became so large that the computer system became separate from the order and invoicing and the handling of the order system. I stayed with that part, and Thurman Fry became manager of the data processing. He also worked under Leon Lackey, but Thurman was the manager. And at one time, after Thurman retired, there was another Tom Cash. Tom left, and for a brief period of time, the manager of the computer system was Don Davis.
Oh, wow.
Don, well, Don is still functioning.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a column in the newspaper every Friday and a minister.
Mm-hmm.
Don left when he decided to go into full-time ministry.
Don's a good friend of mine.
Yes. So Don was a good friend, and still is.
Mm-hmm.
He and I are Legion members, and I have and one of my very favorite Legion members was New Moon John. New Moon and I go back many years, back to my very earliest days in Kannapolis.
Wow.
So he was a friend of many years.
Do you remember anything about the laundry?
I do.
I have to ask.
You did my shirts. You did my shirts. Yeah, New Moon was in the laundry business at that time.
Yeah. He took over when Granddad got sick.
Yeah.
When Granddad died in '49.
Yeah.
All the other brothers went off to school and traveled the world and everything. Dad stayed home, took care of the family, took care of them.
I know.
So,
But he did all right for himself. He was an entrepreneur, and I can remember him as the owner of a pawn shop and the furniture store, and most of the furniture in my house came from his store.
From the buyer's market.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
well, let's move on and talk a little bit maybe about your family. You were married, and then obviously a family came about.
All right. My eldest is Michael Sechler. Michael was born March 27th, 1950, and he basically is pretty much the reason for the building of this house at that particular time. We'd been planning to build a house and move out of my dad's rental house. Rental houses built in the early days had very little in the way of insulation or anything like that, and they were difficult to heat. And his first year was quite difficult. And my promise to him was, "You won't live here another year." So we started looking for property, for real estate, and then that developed into this house at 1800 Brantley Road.
How about that?
Then along came my daughter. I don't know whether she wants me to tell her age or not. Probably doesn't care.
It'll be all right.
Okay.
I know.
All right.
Tim knows what it is
Okay.
anyway.
May 13th, 1953. And I can recall when we had told Michael that he was going to have a new a sister. Well, I think he, at 3 years of age, I'm sure he had more or less had thought in terms of, okay, I'll have somebody to play with now. I can remember the disappointed look on his face when we drove into the driveway with Babe in arms. It took a while to get him acclimated to the fact that this sister was going to have to grow up.
Grow up a little bit.
I am proud to say that both my kids grew up to be model citizens in my estimation. Michael was he was interested in sports, but he had a little bit of an eye problem. He was a little nearsighted, and he really that was before the days of finding ways to correct that and still play sports. So he was not able really to get on to the teams. but he acted as trainer, and he worked with Dr. John Tuttle, who was the team physician, and became an expert in treating minor problems, in doing the wrappings of ankles and feet and that sort of thing.
Became a trainer.
Julia,
You can't make it too good because Tim knows me.
Julia had a couple of friends who became almost sisters. They were either at my house or she was at theirs. She played in the band. She was a flag girl. And all around good student. I would, well, okay, she shakes her
I'm
head.
shaking my head at that one.
She shakes her head, but it was not bad. It was not bad. And well, I guess maybe neither of my kids chose to be well, to devote a whole lot of time to academics. Michael, I just could seldom catch him studying, but he did all right. I can remember at the awards dinner at his graduation. The awards were being given out, and all of the academic awards and so forth were. He was bypassed, as it should have been, because he didn't really try to be at the top of the class. Well, and the fact that I was
All right.
maybe enough said. Well, no, I'll go a little further. With Michael, I have to report that that his health has been a very declining factor in recent years. He recently celebrated his 70th birthday, but he celebrated it in the hospital. He has a varied number of illnesses, including congestive heart failure. He entered the hospital December 13th of 2019
Wow.
for replacing of some stents. give him a better circulation of blood in the heart. There was a malfunction in that surgery, and they punctured an artery.
Hmm.
That was the beginning of a series of things. A couple of code blues, being on the ventilator and for a period of time, and the heart-lung machine. He lived by a machine for a while.
Mm.
He is still in the hospital at this point.
Oh, wow.
He has been in and out of hospital
Rehab.
into
Skilled nurse.
some
Skilled nursing.
nursing care facilities, into rehab, and we thought that, well, maybe we finally had it licked. He went into
Assisted living.
an assisted living facility. The third day there, he fell and broke a hip.
Oh, wow.
Back to the hospital, and he is currently in the hospital, recovering from the broken hip. But is scheduled to leave there within a few days, and it went from there. It went from there. When he was about ready to leave, they found that he was losing blood, and hemoglobin dropped way down, blood pressure dropped way down. So they did colostomy.
You don't need to go into all that. They found his problem.
And did things that.
All right, now let it go.
All right, probably. I'll get back to my daughter now. My daughter has become my caregiver. I live alone, and I think I'm capable of pretty much taking care of myself. But my daughter doesn't quite think so, and I do appreciate so much the fact that that she is spending so much time with me during this pandemic in particular. It certainly gets lonesome when you don't see a human face if you're not going out. At least I see hers and somebody to talk with face to face and that sort of thing. So she is my savior in my old age.
Savior of sanity, huh?
Yeah, in my old age. Yeah.
So, that's awesome.
I am a member of St. John's Reformed Church, and have been since 1948. Served there in many capacities. Um, in fact, I think about every capacity that there is to serve except
Preacher.
preach, and I've done that a time or two. Not really a preach, but at least I was in the pulpit. Back to
While you're there at the church, let me ask you a question.
why?
I want to ask you a question.
All right.
How has your faith guided you through your life?
Without it, I would not have made it.
That's strong.
And I don't understand. I don't understand much of today's drifting away from the church and all of the things that are being taught to our kids in school. And particularly in colleges or universities, if in particular. I saw that when Michael attended the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. That and a lot of other things. And when Julia got college age, I think she had some ideas about Chapel Hill also.
No, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to school.
Okay, but anyway, I said my daughter will not go to Chapel Hill.
Your daughter couldn't have got me in anyway.
But she attended Wingate and Pfeiffer, and has been a teacher now for, well, she retired, what, 3 years ago?
No, 2011. I kept on working, but I officially retired.
Okay,
2011.
all right, but through up until the time of the of this pandemic, she did some substitute teaching even then. But has decided now to give it up.
Yeah.
Full-time job taking care of the old man.
Well, there's no better job than that.
Yeah.
That's right.
I wish I would have. I was in South Carolina, and I wish that I would have had more time to spend with Dad. I tried to get home on the weekends and that sort of thing to spend time with him and as much as I could. But Danny, my brother, was pretty much his caregiver in the last years. And you spoke about loneliness, and you know, after Mom passed, Dad stayed at home by himself, and he seemed to enjoy it for a while. But then you could tell it started getting to him. And
it gets old after a while. You can go for a while, but it does get old.
Yeah.
It does get old. A little bit about my I referred earlier to the fact that I enjoyed the first 42 years of my work at Cannon Mills. The last two I did not. Well, I had well in the days that that well, at the end of my 40 years, I guess, the policy was when or the practice was when the switchboard in the company closed down at roughly 6 o'clock, it was switched to my number, and all incoming calls came into my office there. I was usually in the office well beyond 6 o'clock. I had a call from a lady with a mild Spanish accent, wanting to speak with Otto Stoltz. Otto, at that time, was CEO of the company. We'd gone through a firing of Harold Hornaday as president, and the bringing in of Otto. Well, Leon and I did a lot of talking from what we could see, among ourselves, of course. And our supposition was that the company was up for sale. That Otto was brought in to bring it into selling position. He cut prices on a lot of items to where they were almost giveaway to create cash flow and to get rid of old inventory. When I got this call, they wanted Mr. Stoltz. I asked who was calling, and it was and she said, "Well, Mr. Murdoch." And I said, "Bill Murdoch." We had a Bill Murdoch that worked for us. And she said, "No, David." I called. I said, "I'll take your number and have him call you," which I did. Leon and I again presupposed, okay, this is a possible buyer. This is something coming up, because Murdoch is an entrepreneur. His idea is to buy companies and rob them and get rid of them.
He was a pension writer.
It turned out just that way. I also was in the office then a few weeks later when he and an entourage, a couple of people from Cannon, but mostly his people, showed up at the office there after hours. And it became my lot to show them around. And so I was among the first to meet Mr. Murdoch prior to his
Purchase.
his purchase, yeah. And the purchase took place, so that proved that what Leon and I had presupposed actually had taken place. He was a difficult taskmaster, a hard taskmaster, maybe not difficult, but hard. Uh, he would ask you, how long will it take you to do this? You give him a time, he cut it in half and say, that's what I want. And you break your back in trying to get it done. The end result was the Canon management, instead of being managers of the company, became protectors of themselves, trying to protect their own job. We were told to cut our budget, and we were given a percentage to cut it. Most of my budget was tied up in people and machines, and very difficult to cut.
Mm.
We cut as much as we could, and I broke a few teeth during that period of time. Grinding them at night, not consciously, but I did it at night. Finally, they came to me and said, okay, we want to make a big cut this time. How about your assistant manager? My assistant manager was 58 years old, and I knew that he'd never find a job of the type that he needed at that age. I said, let it be me. So I departed at 61 years of age.
Wow.
And well, the city has developed an awful lot since then, thanks in part to Mr. Murdoch. I will say this for Mr. Murdoch. He paid you for the job you did, but you had to do the job. I have been called to his office. The secretary would call and said, I want you here in 15 minutes with proof. Well, one time it was proof that I had refused to sell a customer. Customer had tried to buy, and I had refused him. But he was not really a customer. He was not an authorized customer, and it was on that basis that I had refused to sell. And there had been correspondence between us, and he wanted to. I had to dig that correspondence out of the files and be in his office in 15 minutes. Well, I made it, and he bought my story. But he said, "There's the phone. Call him in." So while he listened,
You got to make
I
a call.
called the guy and did my best at explaining. The last 2 years were not as pleasant as the other 42.
Yeah, it's tough.
Well, didn't he call you later on and ask you to take another?
Well, no, that was another executive
Another
of the
meal?
company.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you something else here too. That was another executive of the company. They had bought
Wiscasset?
mills in Maiden, North Carolina, and this I think was 6 months after I had retired. He called and said, "Well, are you ready? Are you out of retirement now? Are you ready to go back to work?" And I said, "How about coming to Maiden and help me run the mill up here?" And I thanked him and said, "No, thank you," and that was it.
The end of the day.
That was it.
And he retired and immediately had two grandsons to fill up all that time.
Yeah,
That's great.
that's right. Yeah. I had not mentioned grandsons. One grandson works for the city of Charlotte. He is in the water department, and he is more or less a geographer, an electronic geographer. I'll put it that way. Computerized systems throughout the city. The other is an attorney in Asheville, North Carolina. Both of them are graduates of UNC Chapel Hill.
Chris graduated.
The attorney first went to
Wilmington. UNCW. Wilmington.
he went to UNC Wilmington, graduated down there, and as a teacher.
He was a North Carolina teaching fellow.
Right, a North Carolina teaching fellow, and he was obligated to teach for 4 years or pay back his tuition. So he was going to try to teach the 4 years, but he didn't quite make it. He taught 2 years, and finally, he'd always wanted to get into law. So he had a grant for the College of Law in
Baltimore.
in Baltimore, Maryland. He went there and for 1 year he served an internship
For Fannie Mae in Washington.
in Washington, in the Fannie Mae area of government. And finally decided to I don't like Baltimore, and he applied to several different schools and was accepted in several, one of which was University of North Carolina. So he came there and got his law degree and worked for 2 years in
Raleigh.
in Raleigh in education law. Came to Charlotte and worked another 2 years for University of North Carolina
Okay.
in Charlotte.
In education law, there on college.
Yeah, at the college. And then was offered a job with a firm in Asheville in education law, and he's been there now for 1 year.
A little over a year.
Well, about a little over a year, and it is going great guns. The company has called him in for review a month ago, and he received substantial pay increase, and he's doing okay. He's doing okay.
That's awesome. Great grandchildren?
Pardon?
Any
We
great?
wish.
Don't know great grandchildren yet.
We
huh?
Yeah.
wish.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, he's doing okay.
all right. So we've covered family, we've covered career, we've covered military, we've covered education. Tell us more about Kannapolis, your memories of the old Kannapolis. We're in the new Kannapolis now, so.
Well, in the old Kannapolis, the very old Kannapolis, as I said, it was a bustling town, and it was. But it was also a pretty rough town in the early days. My granddad was somewhat of an entrepreneur himself. He was a farmer. He had some 400 acres of land, but in the off season, when nothing was going on the farm, they would cut timber and have it machined into lumber, and the boys within the family would build a house.
Yeah.
They were good carpenters, so they would build houses. There were several houses in Landis, and they built a couple of houses in Kannapolis, West Kannapolis. That is where the houses were. At that time, it was called Petheltown. Over in back of Church of God Hill. Church of God Hill was that was the foundation of the Holiness Church, which is now Big Elm. But it's progressed a long way since that time.
Yeah.
But anyway, I can recall as a teenager going with my my uncles to Kannapolis to collect rent from those houses, and maybe they got rent and maybe they didn't. You had a pretty rough crowd of people in West Kannapolis. Petheltown, Frog Holler.
Yeah.
Those were old names,
Right.
common names at that time.
Yeah. Mom and Dad lived in Frog Holler when they first got married.
That's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Hardly a weekend would go by when there was not a shooting or a stabbing
Wow.
at that time.
At that time.
So
Do you?
We're better than that now. We're
Yeah.
better than that.
Here.
That's right. We've gotten better.
Do you remember downtown Kannapolis as being a residential area before it was the commercial area was built down
Yeah,
there?
being a what?
Residential area.
Well,
The homes that were built on West Avenue,
I recall that area, yes.
and they were
uh,
moved over off
Uh,
of Ridge Avenue.
No, I don't recall that.
Don't recall.
My earliest recollections of downtown Kannapolis would be Main Street with all the stores
Okay.
there. Yeah.
I want to ask you one other thing. You grew up in the Depression era, where you were around during that time.
I was around at that time, and Mr. Cannon was a paternalistic employer, and by that I mean he tried to take care of his employees. He could have retained a very much curtailed workforce and fired everybody else, but instead he alternated work days. Maybe you would work 2 or 3 days a week. I can recall my dad coming home from work, and my dad worked for Cannon. He was in the packing department. And very dejectedly saying, my wages were cut today. My wages were cut.
Give me 1 second.
It might be interesting, Dad, if you talk about when the unions tried to get in.
Well, I can recall a little bit of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can recall as an aftermath of that, maybe as a part of it. The union attempted to unionize the company. The employees did not want it, but or the major portion did not. I can recall seeing machine guns mounted on top of the roof of the building
Wow.
as a means of protection.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to imagine, isn't it?
Yep.
But it happened. So, and were you in Kannapolis when Mr. Brown had the accident
I was.
in the lake?
Yeah. Yes, that was probably during my middle years. That probably happened in the 70s somewhere.
No. No. Because I went to A.O. Brown High School, which was named after him. So it happened way before
all right.
him.
Then it was part of that. I did not remember
Maybe
when.
in the 50s.
But yes, I can recall that. I can recall that. I don't guess anybody knows for sure of what happened, but I think he probably hit the accelerator. He was parking.
And
His parking place faced into the lake, and I suspect he hit the accelerator instead of the brake, and simply went on out.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine brought him in, Ray Waller. Ray was the well, he was, among other things, he was a swimming instructor at the YMCA.
They probably taught you to swim, Tina. He did about everybody else that can out
You're
this.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do remember.
yeah.
yeah.
So Ray went into the water and brought him out.
Now, didn't Harry Green have a hand in that as well?
What?
Harry Green, did he not have a hand in that as well?
Harry Green may have. I remember Harry Green being mentioned, but I don't remember in what regard.
Yeah,
I don't remember in what regard.
yeah. So,
But Ray passed away here last year,
oh wow,
and he lived next street over from me here.
how about that? So, it was somewhere else I was gonna go. Well, it escaped me. So, what else you got? We've been at this now almost 2 hours.
I think you've almost
Drained you?
You've almost drained me.
You're tired. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I heard
There-
a few stories that I hadn't heard before.
There are other stories that I could tell.
You want to tell about going to Chicago?
Okay, all right. I mentioned Chicago. I was not well. Within the office, we had what we called account managers. We had a person who managed a group of accounts, and maybe only one if it was a great big account. At that time, I managed the Sears and Roebuck. I kept a copy of the order and was kept making sure that everything got shipped on time, and answered questions to salespeople and customers if they called. The management of Sears Roebuck put out a decree, if you will, saying we want there will be a meeting in the Sears Tower on X date at this time, you have a representative of your company there who is able to to speak for the company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think maybe there was some doubts on the part of the company as to whether or not they wanted to go quite that far, so they sent me. Obviously, I did not have the authority to speak or make long range commitments and so forth for the company. I traveled to Chicago and attended the meeting, and the meeting was to the point that they almost wanted to own the companies with which they dealt. They wanted, in some instances, exclusive manufacturing rights. Their name brand. Maybe nobody else. Maybe not even your own name brand anymore. Their name brand. They would tell you what to make, how to make it, and what price they would pay for it. And then they expected me to give them an answer on that, and I couldn't give them an answer.
Yeah.
They were not all that happy about it, but that's the way it was. So I came back home, and I was debriefed by the hierarchy, and my recommendation was, they asked me for my recommendation, and I said, no, don't do it. The end result was Mr. C.A. Cannon notified the salesperson for Sears Roebuck, we don't do business with Sears Roebuck anymore.
Wow.
And for a couple of years, we didn't do business with Sears.
How about that?
We didn't miss them.
Didn't need them.
They missed us.
Mm-hmm.
They came back to us several times, saying one time, well, the management that dictated this policy is no longer with us, and we'd like to come back. And they agreed to let them come back part way, never all the way again. To that extent, Sears Roebuck has never been one of my favorite accounts. I don't even buy from Sears Roebuck.
Yeah. Yeah. My thought that I lost just came back. And what I want to know is your thoughts about Mr. Cannon. Did you have encounters with Mr. Cannon? And did you?
Not really. Well, yes, I had. Yes, I did. Yes, I had a number of encounters with Mr. Cannon. The first one that I will think about here, or talk about, had to do with a dinner meeting at For Pity's Sake. This is shortly after he had bought the property over at For Pity's Sakes, and he'd done some renovation. We had a visitor. The visitor was J.C. Penney, the real J.C. Penney.
Wow.
James Cash Penney. At that time, I was account manager for Penney. So I was invited to the dinner, and I met Mr. Penney, and
Wow.
we had dinner together, and I can recall the cavalcade of Cadillacs that went from the plant over to For Pity's Sakes for a state dinner.
Now, where was For Pity's Sake?
For Pity's Sake, For Pity's Sake is the Murdoch Center
Oh, okay.
at over on
Black.
Cannon Farm Road.
Okay. Okay.
And the story
And I could-
behind that is the first time they went there, Mrs. Cannon said it was in such bad shape, the area. She said,
For
well, for
pity's
pity's
sake.
sake.
Yeah,
And
that,
the
that's
name
how it
stuck.
got its name.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
name
Mrs.
stuck.
Cannon.
How about that?
Yeah, and I was also invited to dinner at the Cannon home in Concord on a couple of occasions. Other than those, I can't recall any actual contact with Mr. Cannon.
There's been talk, and there's been a lot of talk about Kannapolis not having a memorial anywhere for Mr. Cannon, for both Mr. Cannons.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it is well deserved. It would be well deserved. Without them, none of us would be here. We wouldn't be sitting where we are. The current ruling party, the council and the mayor of Kannapolis are adventurous somewhat. They've done a tremendous amount of work here, and it remains to be seen whether or not it pays off to the extent that they had expected. This pandemic is not in our favor.
So you're all in favor of establishing a memorial downtown?
Yes,
for the
yes,
candidates.
yes.
So, okay. Well, can we wrap up at least for today? If you want me to come back another time, we can. I know you're tired
So far as I know, well, I can only think of one other thing that is noteworthy in my book. When Mr. Burdock bought the company, or well, let's say when he sold the company, he only sold what was inside the fence. He didn't sell the city. So he was smart there. And in his first departure, in his first purchase, he bought it twice. He bought it the first time, then he sold it to Fieldcrest. Fieldcrest ended up selling it to Pilatex. Pilatex went bankrupt. Murdoch bought it from Pilatex at a giveaway price. And but in the first purchase, the company had a very sizable cash balance as a part of its assets. One of the things that Mr. Murdoch did is purchase bonds, and I'm going to say junk bonds, if you don't mind.
That's what they were.
Because that's what they turned out to be.
right.
To replace those, put them into the assets instead, and took the cash. That cash was intended to be for retirement funds for employees and I guess maybe part of the golden parachute bailout at the time of the sale. Unfortunately, I was not high enough I was the vice president, but I was down at the end of the line, and I didn't get into the golden parachute arrangement, but when I retired, I did get a year's salary, so they kept me on the payroll for a year. And that and my insurance, and that brought me close to Social Security. So I didn't suffer. In fact, I've made much more money in the years since I retired than I did when I worked.
How about that?
I won't hesitate to say I've been fairly lucky in the stock market, and I'm probably poised right now to lose it all, as is everybody else who's invested there. So I may end up as a socialist in a socialist state with no money, and my kids. That had been my whole purpose in trying. Well, my wife was the world's best at
Pinching pennies.
well, saving money. Let's put it that way. She didn't believe in wasting anything.
Yeah.
And that has been a large part of my philosophy. I've never gone without anything, but there's a lot of things that I could have bought that I didn't.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I was going to point out here, Joe Ridenauer, who was actually the executive vice president of Cannon Mills at the time it was sold, and the rest of the management team at that time, myself included, hired lawyers. No, it's when everything went bankrupt. In other words, whenever the bonds went sour, the money stopped. In other words, you didn't have nothing was coming in. We hired lawyers, sued to get money refunded. We did manage to get it taken over by the state. So the state has been the party who has paid those funds up until the current date.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Well, listen, thank you. Thank you for your time today,
You're welcome.
and we'll get this all processed, and we'll probably do a few little edits here and there, take out some of the unnecessary things, the breaks and
Yeah, okay.
chatter, and then get this all
Yeah,
all
yeah.
put together.
Yeah.
And we'll get you a copy of it, and get you a copy,
Absolutely.
Julia.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this will be on record with the History Associates. I've got to get an authorization from you to put it on record with the History Associates and give
Yeah.
them latitude to.
Well, I haven't said
do all
anything
that.
that was untrue. In my estimation, some things that were maybe uncomplimentary, but in some instances, but it's the truth.
with all things that need to be heard and
Yes.
things that need to be on record.
Yeah,
So, and that's what this is all about.
yeah.
So, all right. Well, I'm going to hit the button here.